I had to reboot because I lost everything. My business failed, everything failed, and I had to start over from literally nothing. And when I say nothing, I mean I really had nothing. So a lot of what I'm doing started as a result of loss, and that was a position I never thought that I would be in, especially after having elevated to a certain point that was beyond comfort to lose it all and be worse than I ever was in my life.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of A Black Belt Way of Life. I'm your host, Master Joseph Lupo Jr., and joining me tonight from the greater metropolitan DC area, Mr. Andre Victorian, the founder and creator of Flex Theory. How we doing, sir?
Oh, it's great to be here. I'm doing great. Thank you for asking.
I love that shirt you're wearing, man. I wear that
Oh, I gotta represent.
all
I
the
gotta
time,
represent.
all the
Yeah,
time. I talk to, my students ask me all the time, they're like, Master Joe, how come you don't have any tattoos? And, I play around with the idea and it always comes up to me, I'm going to put that, that logo on my body one day because I wear it so much. I might as well.
I see. I see. Get a tattoo.
That's it. But I got to ask you a question before we jump into it. Being that you're from, the DC area, I got to ask, Redskins fan, Commanders fan?
So, I'm not a big football fan
All
in
right.
general. So it's less important to me. I always want the teams that I'm near to do well,
Okay.
but that hasn't worked out so well for me. So,
All right. All right. As a Giants fan, I'm not going to attack you. You get a pass tonight. So
all
you're good.
right, all right, all right.
You
So I mean, I didn't show up with my Dodgers shirt on either.
all right. All right.
But that'd have been
They,
that'd have
they,
been.
they used to be in Brooklyn, so you're good. Don't worry about it.
Oh, okay, all
We got
right,
love for them. So
good.
it's all good. But with that being said, audience, you're in for an amazing, amazing, insightful episode. But a really quick word from our sponsor, Mr. Joseph Ferrone of White Realty. This episode of A Black Belt Way of Life is brought to you by Mr. Joseph Ferrone of White Realty. For all your real estate needs, both commercial and residential, don't hesitate to reach out to Mr. Joseph Ferrone. All his information is in the show notes. To our official apparel company, Best Martial Arts Muto USA. Check them out in the show notes. Also to KickFit Taekwondo shoes. Promo code BBWOL at checkout for a nice little discount on that. Mr. Andre, talk
Yes,
to
sir.
us. Talk to us. Let's kick this off. A little back history. I had the pleasure of being in your seminar before I competed in Korea at the Masters Games, and
Uh,
let me tell you, man, I think about that day and my hips. I was like, wow, I didn't even know. For the audience that doesn't know, obviously Flex Theory, the name itself, if you could, make the assumption, is a stretching program, is a flexibility program for athletes of any sport, and you, sir, man, you are very flexible. I mean,
thank you,
I
thank
mean,
you.
180 degree split is, I think, an understatement for where your flexibility is.
I'm grateful to be able to do those kinds of things
Mm-hmm.
and to be able to share, particularly in what you just said, with the improvement of someone's hips. There
Right.
is no sport, there is no locomotive sport on earth that isn't hip centric.
Correct.
And as fighters, particularly pugilists that kick,
Mm-hmm.
we have a different need there, and often those needs aren't fully understood, and so they can't be fully addressed in a way that gives an athlete longevity and
Right.
helps you avoid problems with your hips later in life. And
Right. Right.
those two things are really important together.
We could talk about different dojangs, different schools, or even different sports. I see my son, he's a travel soccer player, and there isn't a heavy emphasis on stretching and flexibility before that game starts. To be honest with you, I'd say 95% of the kids on the soccer field don't even stretch. They just
Mm.
run on,
But
it's I have to be the parent to take my son and be like, listen, warm up, but then take a few minutes to stretch out those legs, to get moving, and
I
I'll
see.
I'll work with him a little bit. But even in my own school itself, I could count on one hand with fingers to spare the number of kids or even adults for that matter that show up early, to stretch, to get
I
prepared
see.
for class.
I see. I
So
see.
I really want to dive into that today. Um, but first, let's backtrack a little bit. Pre flex theory. Talk to us about your journey and how you started in the martial arts.
When I was 7, a kid moved 2 doors down from me, and his name was Richie. I remember the day I met him because I was riding my big wheel. I had a green
Ah,
Incredible Hulk big
love that.
wheel, and I
Big
and I
wheels.
had
That's
a
some nostalgia right there. I
yeah,
love that.
yeah,
We all had
yeah.
big wheels.
So yeah, I mean that is nostalgia, and I
Right,
was
right, right.
wearing I was wearing my Spider-Man, my favorite Spider-Man shirt. It was an iron on. Remember when you got
Yeah,
iron
yeah,
on
yeah, yeah.
out of the cereal box? So I saw this kid and I started pedaling over there. I was on the sidewalk and I stood up and I introduced myself and he punched me in the stomach.
Wow.
And
Hello.
that's how I met Richie.
Oh,
And
wow.
his parents saw, and that was probably the first time I really got the wind knocked out of me. But
Oh,
next thing we were over at his house playing, and
funny how that is,
nothing.
huh?
It is nothing.
Right.
Nothing. Nothing ever happened after that. But Richie had a uncle. His uncle Steve used to come over,
Mm-hmm.
and Uncle Steve used to do martial arts of some kind at some point. And
Mm-hmm.
so he was kind of showing us some kicks, and I started kicking their tree, the bark off of the tree.
Oh, wow.
And his dad and his uncle were like, "We got to go talk to your father." And there's a Taekwondo school like a mile away from here, not
Okay.
even. And
What year is
then
this? What year we're
this
talking right now?
1980, third
Oh,
grade.
oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, 1980. So, um, so the next week, Richie, a kid named Ryan, who was in my class at school, and
Mm-hmm.
I all started at Kwan's Taekwondo in Joliet, Illinois.
Oh, wow.
And after a few months passed, it was just me, and I stayed. And I knew I was supposed to be doing that,
Oh, wow.
and I excelled in ways that you were perhaps unreasonable in the beginning, but
Okay.
I worked really hard. So I always got there
So
early.
you found your passion.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I found my I saw I was introduced to Bruce Lee a few years before that in
Okay.
terms of movies, and so that changed my life. Bruce
Yeah.
Lee and
You took
Chuck
you took
Norris.
you took my next question away.
Oh
What
man.
was the inspirations? Because there's always an outside inspiration, and Bruce Lee's name comes up a lot, you know?
Man, I don't know if people the younger generation understands that a big reason they're probably doing martial arts right now
Mhm.
is because that man lived.
Oh,
He pop
100%.
he popularized so much.
Yes.
That and of course Chuck Norris too at the time. I
Right.
remember there was a movie called Good Guys Wear Black.
Okay.
And it's from 1978. So it was a couple years before. There was a scene. I didn't see the movie then. I
Mhm.
remember seeing the preview for the movie, and there's a car coming at Chuck Norris's character, and he jumps up and he does a flying
Flying
sidekick through the
sidekick.
windshield.
That's right.
I was done. I needed to know how to do that.
Oh,
I
wow.
needed to know how to do that. From that point forward,
Mhm.
I was just looking for how is this ever going to happen, and it happened when Richie moved a couple doors down.
Punch to the
So
stomach.
that's how I got in
The
there.
punch to the stomach. Nice.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, it was worth the wind getting knocked out of me. I don't even know
Okay.
why that happened. I have no idea why that happened. But hey, it worked out.
There you go. So now as you're progressing in Taekwondo, talk to us about how, about competition. Talk to us about, your accomplishments as a competitor.
Okay, so in the beginning, the Taekwondo school that I was from, we just did local stuff. And then
Mhm.
there was this point where there was a transition, and I didn't know why. And it was mostly because the Olympic style of Taekwondo was being more popularized.
Right, right.
And so, let's see, I started, let's see, I got my black belt when I was 11
Mhm.
and started states then. And so each year I won states, which was, great. And then did juniors, seventh, eighth, and ninth grade. So, oh, but before that, I ran into, you may have heard of this gentleman, also from Illinois. I had to fight this guy named Juan Marino,
Oh, wow.
and that didn't work out the way I wanted it to for me.
Mhm.
I knew who he was, and I was prepared, I thought. And I learned so much because I couldn't figure out how to touch him.
Mhm.
His movement was so good, and um, that changed. The funny thing is, we were both fighting fin weight in adults. We won first and second in state,
Okay.
but we were both kids. They used to let us
Mhm.
do that then. So
Mhm.
we went through the adults, and then I lost to Juan.
Right.
So that was
They
great.
they always say, our greatest learning experiences are through our losses.
Yeah, yeah. That was a great one because the the first person visual of a fight is so much different than the profile when
Sure.
you're watching it, through a camera or even as a coach.
Mhm.
So that taught me a lot about distancing and feinting and things that I wasn't doing nearly as well as I should have, and didn't even
Okay.
know I should have been doing them better. It was a great. The
Mhm.
loss was a great victory. I'll say
Right,
that.
right, right, right. That's awesome. That's awesome. And now, so you're progressing as a competitor. Talk to us a little bit now. Now, talk to us about the winning.
That was actually my first loss,
Mhm.
and one of the things that made me do is I had to learn how to accept that you can lose something and it doesn't mean you're not good anymore. That was a big deal for me because I thought, the household I grew up in, there was a certain standard, and in my child mind, I thought if you didn't produce that standard every single time, you weren't good enough.
Okay.
I learned the joy of post loss. The loss wasn't a joy,
Mhm.
but I trained differently after that, and I saw things differently, and it made me grow up. And after that, let's see, I went to ju- juniors, Syracuse, New York. As a matter of
Oh,
fact,
wow.
I fought in the Carrier Dome. I met
Okay.
a lot of people I know today. Then I won juniors a few times. I went to the, let's see, before there was a juniors team.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
I think the year before, there was no junior world championship or anything.
Mhm.
But I got to go to the Olympic Training Center,
Oh, wow.
or an annex from it in Marquette, Michigan,
Mhm.
and that's when I trained for a week with now Master Han Lee and Greg Baker.
Okay.
And I was 14, and I remember see and I think Lung Pham, who it was just amazing to see people on that level,
Mhm.
and that also changed my perspective because yeah, we were really good kids, but we weren't fully developed,
Yeah.
and we're looking at people who are
You're looking at men.
grown
You're
man
looking
developed.
at
Yeah,
men.
we're looking at men.
Grown man stuff. Yeah.
Grown man strength looks
Yep.
different,
Oh, yeah.
and then that was an amazing experience.
Mhm.
So after that, I had a break. I went to a specialized high school, and it was residential, so I had a few years off. And I didn't pick Taekwondo back up in terms of competition until I was 20.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah,
Nice little
yeah,
break.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
19. And I trained for a few months, and then I flew out to Berkeley and fought in collegiates.
Okay.
And I didn't have a coach or anything. when I was there, I was winning fights. I was seeing stuff I hadn't seen before.
Mhm.
I met a bunch of people that I'm friends with to this day at that competition. I met the Howard Taekwondo team. I ended up
Okay.
going to Howard after that. I met Master George Bell there. And as a matter of fact, he was in the same weight division. And when he lost a fight, and we, we clicked, and I said, look, I don't have a coach, would you mind helping?
Mhm.
I'm going to quarterfinals, and he coached me through quarterfinals. And then after that, um, I fought someone from Howard. And then after I won that fight, George wasn't available, and the Howard coach coached me in my final. And I don't know if do you remember Nick Turstenjack?
Yes, 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 yes.
Yeah, so that was my final, and it was a great fight. I didn't come out on top, but I learned a great deal,
Mhm.
and I felt great about what I did. There's this point where you also go through as an athlete where you don't know that you didn't win, and I by that I mean with coming into rules that were a little bit different and fighting. Last time I'd fought, I was 15.
Okay.
And I thought blocking everything was good, but you know how at that point some of the scoring was on sound and positioning.
Right, right, right.
So I was I
This was
was
back in the time where that it was all about the impact, you know?
it's all about the impact. So
Yeah.
his impact was great, and blocked or not, some of those things were scoring, so I didn't understand.
Mhm.
I scored, but it was a great guy. We both scored on each other. And then the next year, I went to Howard and started fighting with the Howard team and fought in Thibodaux, Louisiana,
Mhm.
and placed there. And it wasn't until a few years later that I really didn't fight that much. But 97 Nationals was my last big. I got a silver in welterweight, and team trials was my first team trials, and that didn't go as well as I would have liked it to, but
Mhm.
I had a great, great time.
It's great, all the name dropping and the audience have seen from past guests how taekwondo or sports, when you're competing at a certain level, you build bonds that really really last forever. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
one of my previous guests, Mark Williams, he talks about
Oh,
he could make a phone call to someone on the other side of the country and be like, "Listen, I'm flying in," and they'll be right there. You lose touch with people for years and years and years, but that bond is always there.
it
It
is.
it really is a wonderful thing, through sport. Um,
It
it's just
reminds me of something that my father's a Korean War veteran,
oh wow,
and it's not
wow, God
something he
bless,
talked about a lot.
God
Thank
bless.
you. It's not something he talked about a lot, but I do know this: people who have been through that kind of an event together have a
Mhm.
different bond than anyone else who can
Yes.
describe a bond.
Mhm.
And what I recognized is that when fighting each other, we weren't, we became closer after fighting. And a lot of people who don't fight don't get that.
Mhm.
But we became closer after fighting. And there was this bond that the one you're talking about right now,
Yeah.
that it feels like time hasn't passed and we're still in the same space, and we have been all this time. And I know people like that,
Mhm.
and I've stayed in contact with a group of them, and they're just like brothers for life because we fought each other, because we fought together, or fought each other, because that happens
Sure.
too.
Right?
It's an amazing thing.
Mhm. No, it's great, it's
How
great.
much peace comes out of pugilism? A lot of peace comes out of it.
A lot of it, and a lot of whether it's pugilism, whether it's sport, I tell my son, like I have mentioned, he's in travel soccer, and I said and he's really getting into it now. He's at that age that it's really becoming real,
Uh,
and he's starting to travel with his teammates and everything. Games are not 10 minutes away anymore. Games are an hour, hour and a half away. And there's long car rides and this. And so he's really starting to experience it. And I tell my son, some of these guys that are your teammates now are gonna be friends for life. And he looks at me,
right.
he's like, really? I'm like, yeah, yeah, you'd be surprised. I tell him, and he's met them obviously, my closest friends, man, they're from the Taekwondo school,
Right.
and it's just again, it's that special bond that it's hard to explain unless you've been in it, you
It
know.
that's true.
That's
That's
the
true.
best way to put it. Whether and it goes across all sports. So now let's jump forward. Let's talk about present day. Before we get into it, explain to the audience what is flex theory and how it came to be.
Well, flex theory is a set of protocols that I use to develop strength at length.
Mhm.
We have there are a lot of terms thrown around by influencers and people who do all types of flexibility training. Mobility is one that comes up a lot, and flexibility is obviously one that comes up.
Now, if you don't mind me cutting you off, now, do you have a background in that? You know, whether it was what you studied in the university, or this is just something that you fell into.
It's I fell into it.
Oh wow.
So one, I'm very analytical. I started out as a physics and math major, and then did mechanical engineering,
Oh wow.
and then ended up working in databases and software related things for my first number of years. And then this is actually my reboot after a whole bunch of other things that are probably beyond scope of the
Okay.
conversation,
Okay.
but um, but certainly not off limits. It's just that I had to reboot because I lost everything. My business failed, everything failed, marriage failed, everything, and I had to start over from literally nothing. And when I say nothing, I mean I really had nothing.
Well,
And
you know what? When you hit rock bottom, there's only one direction you could go.
yeah, yeah. Well, I was. If that ain't it, I don't want to ever be any closer. So a lot of what I'm doing started as a result of loss.
Mm.
I had a consulting business. It did really well for a number of years. Contracts ended. Couldn't pivot, couldn't figure out what else to do. I lost everything. I lost my house. I lost, marriage failed. Everything fell apart. And then I really literally had nothing. And that was a position I never thought that I would be in, especially after having elevated to a certain point that was
Mhm.
beyond comfort, to lose it all and be worse than I ever was in my life. And I
Wow.
felt a lot of shame. I felt a lot of embarrassment.
Wow.
And I have to
Well,
say
you
that
know
that
what? When we hit rock bottom, there's one direction to go,
yeah,
and that's it.
well,
We get up. We learned that. That's one of the great things about Taekwondo. We really learn how to pick ourselves up
yeah. So I never got hit like that in competition, but I was down for part of the count. I had at least an 8 count in real life.
in life. Yeah.
Yeah, and that taught me a lot. It taught me, uh, for one, I thought of myself as humble, and there was a good part of that that was true. And I
Hmm.
thought of myself as a person without a lot of ego, and a good part of that was true. But what it showed me is how much humility and ego I still had left,
Okay.
and it put me in a position to deal with that.
Hmm.
That was powerful. That made me a better communicator. It made me more empathetic. It made me a
Hmm.
better teacher. It made me a better
Wow.
father. It made me a better person that relates to other human beings. I couldn't figure out how to pivot with getting another contract and how that business was going, but I did figure out how to pivot into something that made me happy, that I had to rebuild, and that was from me, because I could use my analytical problem solving skills and my creativity and my talent
Hmm.
and the things that made me fundamentally me, which was what flex theory is. It is ways to produce quality tissue, soft tissue throughout your body that can sustain loads at length. You don't
Okay.
just want to be flexible. You want, and this is what I say, like
Mm.
there's a lot of mobility and flexibility information out there, but mobility is a combination of strength and range of motion that is defined by the endpoints. The endpoints is the flexibility.
Yes.
The mobility is the movement. So mobility requires strength. By it takes strength to move. The question becomes, what kind of strength are we talking about? Because strength is arbitrary. A a sprinter, an elite sprinter, every ground strike from each foot is 4 to 7 times their body weight.
Wow.
There isn't a power lifter in the world who can lift that with 2 legs. So who do you say is stronger? And I realized, wait a minute, when we talk about strength, it has context. I want to be the person who can produce a great deal of force in a short amount of time, not have to sustain it, because that's how kicks and punches work.
Correct.
Not just the person who can push, and maybe you get 5 seconds or whatever to do the lift, and there's value to that, but that doesn't transfer directly to the kind of movement that we need, or explosive movement for athletes. So what I did is I combined the modalities from plyometrics and isometrics
Yes.
and flexibility training that I was already doing that was isometric in nature. I
Hmm.
started adding other things, and I realized the reason I was the athlete that I became in the first place was because I was inherently doing these things.
You were already doing it
I
without
was already doing,
yeah, yeah,
and then I extracted the principles. So I asked the
sure.
question: Why are gymnasts so strong in that way? But nobody else can do what the gymnasts do with their upper body. No one else can do that. There's no other person who gets on the rings and can do that. You
Right,
got to train specifically. I don't care how much you lift; it just doesn't happen.
right.
Nobody beats a sprinter in running. Why are they better at that? And why can't a sprinter just go win at cycling? And the specificity started to show me that principally
Hmm.
we all do this set of things.
So you
Here's
really you really dove deep and you really studied
yeah,
hard. Yeah, okay.
yeah, absolutely right. So I wanted to know what made people great. Why was Michael Jordan who he was? Why? And I'm from the Chicagoland area. I was a
Yeah.
big Walter Payton fan,
Hmm.
the Bears back then, and he was an incredible running back. How did he do that? Like what made? I looked at what his training was. And as I continued to do that from athletic genre to athletic genre, I started to see things that were in common that nobody was really talking about, at least not at the time.
Okay.
And I wanted to take the strength and capability principles from each place, many of which I saw, hey, I'm already doing that. Oh, that's why this is working for me. Ah, that's why my hook kick looks like this. And I just kept gathering and reduced them to a set of principles. I'm a science and math nerd, so I I'm a big Isaac Newton fan, and he
Okay.
has 3 laws. So I wanted to reduce it to the smallest set of principles that I could and apply those, and the rest is engineering. You got the science, the rest is what you can build. How
Hmm.
creative can you be? How can you construct and solve problems with it? That's how it was born. Those parts of me that came together. Then I got a chance to work with. I had injuries. I overcame a ton of injuries from lack of use and sitting at a computer screen with multiple screens and
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
stuff. And 15 years go by and I was a different person. I still had athleticism, but I was hurting. My hips were hurting. I'd gone to the doctor. They just wanted to medicate me, and I remembered this was sometime after Michael Jackson died,
Okay.
and the idea of a painkiller as a solution to not solving a problem but feeling better. My response was, are you familiar with a guy named Michael Jackson? Because that did not work out for him,
Yeah.
and I didn't.
You're just masking what's going on.
Right.
Yeah.
So
It's a
that's
temporary
when
fix.
it was, and so I didn't want that. So I stepped away, and I started deconstructing the things I had done as a child and as a teen and in my 20s, and applying that to my hips and my knees. 2 weeks later, my knees weren't bothering me.
Oh
My hips
wow.
weren't bothering me. My shoulder was getting better. And it's also came up because the reason I knew those things were bothering me is I'd picked up salsa dancing. And that was a brand new thing for
There
me,
you go.
and a whole nother network. But I was like, I like this. I can't have this pain. So it was born out of who I was and then a new problem that was presented because of a new activity.
Okay.
And then, as soon as there was a school, a salsa school I was going to in the area, and I explained to the owner what I was doing, and he's like, "You got to do a class here." I was like, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, you got to do a class." I didn't even have a name for it yet, and so I started doing a class at a salsa academy, and then it started growing, and I had as many people in that class as they did in the salsa class,
Oh,
and then I started
wow.
doing my own, and then um,
So that was the spark you needed.
that was the spark I needed. And fortunately, that happened before the larger part of the downfall when everything fell apart. So I already had this thing that was starting, but it wasn't sustainable. It
Mhm.
wasn't with regard to what I was earning from it.
Yeah.
But I will say one of the things at my lowest point that kept me from being lower was I realized that I was working with people online already. This is, 2016,
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
2017.
This
I
is
was
before the
already,
world went remote when
yes,
COVID hit.
before the world
Yeah,
went
yeah.
remote.
Yeah.
Right. So as I was uh, working with people, I was solving problems. They were having better lives. And before I could ever ask myself, oh, I'm sorry, before I could ever feel like in the position that I was in with all that loss and question my value, I kept showing it with the people that I was training. And that helped me tremendously.
Sure. The feeling of paying it
My
forward is tremendous. Yeah.
the value was in the value. It didn't matter if I lost $1 million. I had $1 million ideas. It
Right.
didn't matter if I what the objects were. You can get more objects. What I had to focus on was nurturing the value that was in me, working with people, and then growing that and making it a mutual blessing. And that's really how it was born. I was helping people who were had uh, arthritis and PMR, polymyalgia rheumatica. I have a couple people, one of the people in the couple has that right now. Scoliosis.
Oh, okay.
People who had real problems that were different with regard to how our longer term solutions had to look, but they were getting better. And then, and I was working with people in the salsa community that were performers, and then finally Taekwondo people,
Right,
which
right.
was which that didn't happen until a few years into it.
Mhm.
And then I started getting people who were doing Muay Thai and hockey, and then I had a bunch of track athletes, sprinters,
From
hurdlers.
all sports now we're talking.
Oh
Wow.
yeah. I had football players,
Wow.
soccer players, taekwondo athletes, of course, kyokushin fighters, and it just kept going. And I just kept meeting new people, and each
Mhm.
one of these sets of opportunities, the problems that they had were opportunities for creating solutions. And then I was able to refine the things I understood. And that's the other thing. I always kept room for this isn't done. It has to keep the experiments, the lab with people is going to justify the way I'm thinking about it. For the beginning, I got an opportunity to train people who were in the salsa community and
Okay.
performers that were right in my wheelhouse. I was learning salsa. This was like 12 years ago. I was gung ho, and then there were people who had different kinds of specific problems that were arthritic or were having trouble just getting up and down their own stairs for a variety of reasons, and people who had certain kinds of injuries, the MCL, ACL reconstructions,
Mhm.
hip issues, and I got the opportunity to work with people who had a variety of problems different than anything that I had experienced myself,
Mhm.
but the principles and the processes worked for them. People were able to bend their legs better. Their hips were able to open up. I was able to help one person not have to get a knee surgery, and it was so
Oh,
astounding to the
wow.
doctor that was helping. The doctor got in touch with me, and I went and met with her in the office. She wanted to know what it is I did, and I'm still in touch with her to this day. She sends me
Oh,
people
wow.
sometimes. So I got an opportunity to solve problems, which is something I'm very good at, and solve problems that help people, which is something I care about. Or so, solving problems is something I care about, and people are something I care
Of
about.
course, of course.
And you putting them together, and then it wasn't until a little bit later that I started to work with actual Taekwondo athletes, and then it was Muay Thai and Kyokushin and Capoeira, and
Mhm.
I had hockey goalies, mostly goalies, people who were in squat positions, and they were having issues because of those positions. So
Right.
I've worked with people in uh, who had issues with their knees and hips because of the goalie position, and then triple jumpers and long jumpers and sprinters and explosive athletes that had to have quick movement for one reason or another and be
Mhm.
able to do that
That
repetitively.
all requires flexibility.
It does,
Yeah. And
and it
it
requires.
you're the doctor of flexibility, man. Let's just come out there and say it, man. I love it.
Well, so the thing that sets it apart from just you can be flexible. I remember growing up hearing that if you're too flexible, it's dangerous. And that was not a true statement, but it wasn't a fully false statement. A lot of
Mhm.
people were doing, you can do flexibility training that makes you limber, but you're not strong. The problem
Correct.
was never the flexibility. The problem was the inability to change directions when you started moving toward your maximum point of stretch. If you can't do that, then the soft tissue, and the soft tissue hasn't been prepared through training to absorb those forces and then redirect them, well, then you're not strong enough to overcome the need to change position.
Okay.
That's when people get hurt. So everything I did was around, max positions or near max positions and learning how to explode out of those near max positions. And it gave me the speed that I had been taking advantage of for years. And I recognized what some of those exercises were and how they went from concentric to eccentric lengthening and what that did. And then later on, reading about, oh, okay, here's how they're using that in football. And I was like, oh, they're doing that too. That's why my hook kick looks this way. That's why my recoil is, that's how why I'm able to extend. And it just started to click. And I realized more and more, and that not unlike most people, there's more of there's more that we have in common than we have separate. And I started looking at what was in common with all those different disciplines and reduced it to a small set of principles that I allowed to keep growing and changing to correct.
Mhm.
You put this out there, you do an experiment. The experiment should show whether something's true or not. If it's not true, you go back and you correct the way you were thinking about the model. You correct the model, you move forward, you do another experiment, do another set of them. They verify and justify the model.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
kept going through that process and I was like, okay, I got it. And then anything else after that was added. I didn't realize it before. And it helped me because I went from, having some injuries that persisted for years and then not doing stuff to finding athleticism that I didn't have when I was at my best,
Oh,
you
wow.
know, decades later. And so that's what right now I focus on making myself the best. I don't think of it like I don't need to be the 24-year-old me. I can do stuff I couldn't do at 24. And I want to
That's
be the most
incredible.
explosive, thank you, the most explosive mobility. That's what flex theory is about.
Mhm.
Explosive mobility and being powerfully flexible, expressing power out of a position of length so that all of the tissue, all of the loading, all of the joints are capable of producing there without inflicting injury and will impact the skill that you care about in a positive way.
Wow.
So I've gotten better at that as I've gotten older, and I realize it's one of the things that's keeping me young. There's no substitution for. No one is ever too strong. That has never happened to a human being that they're too strong. They might have imbalances in strength, but no one ever becomes too strong.
Right.
So, gaining strength at length, gaining explosive strength specifically, that is more like the sprinter analogy of hitting the foot against every foot strikes 4 to 7 times the body weight. I want that. I want that over and over. So I figured out ways to train that in positions that were typically considered positions for flexibility, and I turned it into strength training. and specific
Okay.
kinds to support the explosiveness, to prepare the tissue, and to do the explosiveness. And that's where the speed came from. I put it in overdrive as a more mature adult, realizing what actually gave me those benefits. And I knew what some of those things were before, but it became so clear to me. I started creating other ways to do the training that I could get those benefits in ways I never achieved before, and they started to show up. And I started doing it with other athletes.
Wow.
So that's flex theory is about the tissue prep and the tissue production and growth so that you can have amazing athleticism out of out of positions of flexibility so
Mhm.
that you're explosively mobile,
Wow.
not just mobility in a common sense. I want to be explosive. I want to be able to induce that stretch reflex. I want to be able to change direction. I want to be able to compress and expand in ways that fulfill the need of the skill beyond perhaps what people thought was possible before. So
Mhm.
you push those limits, and that's where my passion is for flex theory.
Wow. No, this is an amazing lesson, and I really hope everyone's appreciating this. I know I appreciate this. This is amazing. Now, this was the question I was saving for the end of the episode. And then I'm
Okay.
I'm also going to bring up another topic. Let's bring this to the modern day Taekwondo athlete. How is flex theory going to take them to the level that they want to achieve? How's flex theory going to take that athlete that's on the third place and on the second place on the podium is going to take them to number one? Tell us how that's going to happen with flex theory.
The undergirding of any skill comes from another skill. Strength is a skill.
Okay.
We know it's a skill because it can be learned. You can do things that make you stronger over time. That means your body learned to become stronger.
Right.
Speed is a skill. Flexibility is a skill. All those skills impact the primary tools and the skills you use with the primary tools. So, what flex theory does is it undergirds all of the other stuff that gives you a superior tool. And then you still have to learn the timing and the distancing and the other skill of the art and the sport.
Right.
But if all things are equal, and you have superior reaction time, superior reaction strength, superior starting strength, superior explosive strength, you're going to dominate and overwhelm the people who are in front of you because they just can't handle your physicality. One of the
Wow.
things that flex theory does is it gives them that leg up on physical aspects that don't add a ton of weight to a person. You're going to build musculature from this. All of mine is from it. And I have a really strong lower body because of the things that I've done, but it made me explosive. I'm explosive to this day. I'm 53 years old, and I'm an extremely explosive athlete. Um,
53, man. You don't look a day
yeah,
over 23, bro. You
well,
look
I
amazing.
appreciate that.
You look amazing.
I,
That's
I appreciate
that's
I
phenomenal.
appreciate that. So, what I would say it would do for a modern day athlete, the rules may have changed, the game has changed, but you know what hasn't changed? An athlete has to be athletic.
Right, right. And
I
that's even
make
more
athletes
paramount now. I
athletic.
just spoke about that. I had a soccer coach on recently, and he says it. The amount of athleticism in today's sport is tremendous. You have to be athletic.
You do, yeah, and
And
that makes sense for anything.
hmm
So the value of flex theory to the modern day athlete is people come out with more explosive hips, more explosive and resilient hamstrings. If you can reduce your chances of injury and you can produce more power and speed, and you can determine how you're going to change your timing and how you're going to use that power and speed, you have options. Any of us who have fought, you don't do the exact same thing the same way every time. You have change ups on
sure,
purpose in order to have some off timing and things like that.
correct.
But when you can hit that higher gear that you were never able to hit before, and you can use that in your competition, if you can be faster and stronger. I know one thing that's very different about today's sport compared to when we were, fighting in the trembling shock
hmm
area. era is we had to be concerned more about the punishment possibility. When you got hit, you had to think about whether or not you were willing to accept that again with what else you were doing and if it
Hmm.
was worth it. Now, I know that's still true, but it's not true to the same degree.
It's not.
So, if you can take a person who knows today's game and you can give them more power and you can give them more speed without adding bulk
Hmm.
and without negatively influencing the game, they're going to be more athletic. If you can change direction faster, they're going to be more athletic and they're going to have more options, more
Sure.
chances. The rest is game. But I give people those fundamentals that allow everything else to be produced.
Wow, no, that's great stuff. And now you're representing, that USA Masters team shirt you got on now, and you are an official sponsor of the upcoming US Masters Cup in January in Houston, Texas. Talk to us a little bit about, how the US Masters team, the movement has been a part of Flex Theory.
That's interesting because this actually is another origin story. When I was training with the Howard team when I was at Howard University, there was this young lady that showed up after leaving OTC with the Olympic Training Center with I think it was a knee injury, and you might know her. Her name was Trinity. She,
Yes.
she was 17 and 17 or 18, and that summer she trained with the Howard team, and she was just good people. She was talented. She worked hard. She never complained, and she just had a great magnetic personality. Fast forward, I didn't see her for years, and I didn't see her for years until Facebook,
Mm.
and we reconnected. But there were two things that happened there. One, I loved her name, and I remember telling my teammates, "Man, that's just an incredible name." And this was a few years before The Matrix came out.
Oh.
So then The Matrix comes out, and here's Trinity in The Matrix as one of the protagonists.
Right, right, right.
And I'm like, "Oh man, I got it." And so my daughter's name is Trinity. She's literally
Wow.
named after Trinity.
Oh my
And
God, that's awesome. I love that.
when we when we reconnected on Facebook, she was reaching out to get some help with some hip flexor issues, and we connected. And we did a session, and I helped her out with it. And I realized she didn't quite remember who I was. She didn't remember that I was the same guy at that moment that was training with her 30 years ago at Master Lee's school,
Wow.
and I made the joke. I said, "How can you not remember me? I named my firstborn daughter
Oh
after
my
you."
God.
Yeah. And so we had a big laugh, and I told her how all that progressed. But then it was all clear, and I did some training with her online to help her with some of the issues that she was having. And after that, I ended up getting an invitation during COVID for a remote training session for one of the Masters events. And then a year or two later, I went to Houston
Right,
and
right. That's where we
did
cross
training
paths.
there.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, that's where we crossed paths.
Mhm.
So
Listen,
that's my
I remember doing your stretching exercises in the holding area, before my semifinal match against China, and then
ah
I was doing those mobility exercises. I'll never forget it. And then I had a 5-hour wait until the final.
oh
And
man,
how did I stay loose? What you showed us in Texas.
good,
And
good,
and
good,
I took
good.
that to the gold. So I'll never forget that.
Oh, that's a great story.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
a great story. Thank you for sharing
A
that with me.
hundred
I had no
percent.
idea. I had no idea. That's
Yeah.
wonderful,
True story there.
man.
So, it's, tonight's been wonderful. It's been great. You know, um, Tell us where we could reach out to you, how we connect to you. Tell us where we could find all that.
Well, so there are a couple of ways. One of them is my Instagram has grown quite a bit in the last year,
Hmm.
and I have a flex. I'm Flex Theory on Instagram. I get tons of DMs there because I post. in things that show the results of the training with me and some of the training together and do some voiceovers.
Yeah.
But that's to send people also to, I have a school community, and that's where I train people one on one, but I also train people through the school community with there are 200 hours, 200 plus hours of material already there, and stuff that comes out every week to help people with their backs and their fix their knees and their shoulders, and how to master the straddle. And by the way, we were talking about Bruce Lee earlier because that was a big influence of
Yeah.
mine. So all of the coursework that's on there is named after Bruce Lee movies. There's
Wow.
Enter the Straddle, there's Hips of Fury,
Oh, I love
there's
it.
there's the Cossack Connection, there's Way of the Hurdler,
Oh,
and
wow.
Game of Flex. So these are all categories of positions and the things that we can make out of those. And then you put them all together, and I have the five deadly positions after the five deadly venoms.
Wow.
So it's how you use these things and you stack them
Mm-hmm.
so that you can produce the athleticism that you need. And you don't have to be a martial artist at all. I just happen to have about a 50-50 split there. So on school, I'm it's school.com/the flex theory method. That's where I'm driving people. They can contact me on Instagram. Yeah, they can check that site out. I train people one on one, and I'm growing a wonderful community of people in all kinds of martial arts and yoga and all kinds of non martial arts activities, and it's beautiful.
No, it's great stuff. And all your information is going to be in the show notes. Um, thank you so much, Mr. Andre Victorian, for such an amazing, amazing, insightful, and educational episode here at A Black Belt Way of Life. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for having me. It was wonderful to be here.
Thank you. With that being said, to our audience, make sure to check out our sponsor, Mr. Joseph Ferrone of White Girt Realty, our official apparel company, Best Martial Arts Muto USA, to KickFit, promo code BBWOL at checkout. All the information is in the show notes. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Make sure to follow us, subscribe, leave a comment, like us, follow all our social media pages, follow us wherever you consume podcasts. With that being said, always remember the words my father said: your black belt is worn around your heart, never your waist. A Black Belt Way of Life was produced by Press Record Studios.